Live streaming is on.
Hello, everyone. All right. This is Adam Meister, the Bitcoin Meister, the Disrupt Meister. Welcome to This Week in Bitcoin. Today is, we're there, baby. We're in the 2020s now. January the 3rd, 2020. Strong hand, golden age of the 2020s. Oh, everyone's going to talk about it today. Bitcoin is next. Bitcoin in motion. These three guys are definitely in motion. One Bitcoin equals one Bitcoin. Value your wealth in Bitcoin. I am offended by selling your Bitcoin. All right, dudes. We got quite a panel here today. It is Ansel Lindner, Steve Barber, and Blake Anderson are in the house. Hey, I'm getting a little weird feedback. You guys, everything sound good on your end? All right, good.
Yeah.
Okay, so today, 11 years ago, Bitcoin, it started. So we're going to talk about that 11-year anniversary. These three guys are linked to below, but it's also proof of keys. The day everyone was supposed to remove their Bitcoin from exchanges. So we're going to talk about that. I'm gonna start with Blake because he hasn't been on a YouTube show for a long time, and I'm really happy to have him and everything. And you guys are pumped too, so pound the freaking like button for Blake Anderson. But Blake, what's happened today? I hope a lot of people pulled it off. Do you think any exchanges will go down? And what do you think about the larger picture? We're gonna have Bitcoin banks, okay, people. They're gonna have to have proof of reserves eventually. What are your thoughts?
Well, it's a good. I mean, you started out with saying one Bitcoin is one Bitcoin, and that's fantastic. Yeah, that's good. But a bird in the hand and two in the bush. I mean, there's some different mathematics going on here. And if your keys are with somebody else, if you really want your Bitcoin to be one Bitcoin, you want to own that Bitcoin. If it's not your keys, not your Bitcoin. So I think that's interesting. Some people said it's not good to do this because pulling all the coins off of exchanges is going to destabilize them, and that's bad. But I don't think that the ideological core of savers that are doing this are going to have that big of an impact that they're really going to upset the exchanges. But I think that it's a great thing to have people not storing a horse ton of value in somebody else's possession. Learn to multi-sig, learn to take your SIGs, learn to back up and transfer and use Bitcoin so that you know how to use it instead of interacting with a company that's using it.
Yeah, these are obvious things for us hardcore vets, but we're going to get a lot of newbies into this space in this decade or the 20s, whatever you want to call this. Do you foresee Bitcoin banks getting bigger and bigger, and finally one of them actually doing a proof of reserves, just showing, because it's so easy to do with this blockchain and everything like that? Why can't they do this?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we're going to have a Bitcoin roaring 20s. I mean, this is the start of the 20s here, and there's going to be roaring 20s that's going to be fueled by value competition that works at an elemental level. Like I tell people, like, you can buy candy, you can buy bigger things than candy. Like there's a whole list of things that you can buy that get more and more and more expensive, up to real estate and stocks and bonds. And when you get to the very, very top, there's currency. And people are like, what company does Bitcoin compete with? And it's like, they're not that far down on the ladder. They're all the way at the top, elementally competing with other forms of scarcity. Not just other currencies, other forms of scarcity, math-based versus fiat. And I think that like understanding how fundamental that is lets people understand, okay, we probably will see a new roaring 20s, and where it's going to come from is going to be the accountability that comes with these new technologies that we've invented. And so, yeah, I think that banking will definitely have a relationship with these technologies in the future. And I hope that we have the type of banking that is transparent, that serves individualism and doesn't serve collectivism, where it's, give up your rights and we'll make it faster. I hope that we never see that type of attitude take over pervasively in Bitcoin, because that would be really bad.
Well, speaking of digital scarcity, we will be talking about the halving, no doubt, also, since we'll be talking about the 2020s and this year, because we've entered a halving year here. Steve, did you remove your Bitcoin from all exchanges? What's your take on proof of keys, if anything?
I haven't used an exchange since Quadriga, and luckily I didn't learn a lesson there, because I never did hold my coins on that exchange. I guess I'm lucky in the sense that I don't have to use exchanges to get Bitcoin. I can just mine it. So from a personal standpoint, I'm lucky in that regard, and I haven't had to hold them on exchanges. and obviously the Quadriga story ended very badly. I was actually recommending Quadriga to people because I used it a few times. It was actually a decent service for Canadians. I was recommending it to people up until, things got a little shady. And I remember I was in a Telegram group and someone was messaging, I think it was a Bitcoin Canada group or something. And there's some messages going back and forth. And I got a little, it made me nervous. So I messaged all my friends that I had, talked about Bitcoin in the past and said, hey, like if you have stuff on Quadriga, and I knew some of them did, get your coins off there. And sure enough, one of my good buddies, he had like half a Bitcoin or something on there. He got it out just before they started like freezing accounts. So that was sort of lucky that I happened to be sort of paying attention that he got his coins. But then actually I found out later, another friend on my ball team, he had left his coins on Quadriga. So now, of course, he's one of the guys in I guess might be a class action suit going on now. But I mean, obviously Quadriga is a good example of, not your keys, not your coins. And as for the whole theme of, like custodial wallets and Bitcoin banks, I think for sure you're going to just see more and more of that. Like, obviously, Bitcoin doesn't exactly scale for, not everything can be on chain. Like, obviously that's why we got the trustless or trust minimized layer 2, like Lightning, but custodial works just fine as well, as long as the reserves are there and they're not being fraudulent. So.
All right. But Blake, you were raising your hand. You wanted to add something there before Ansel jumps in. What did you have to say?
It's really tough with these exchanges and stuff, because I had a very, very similar situation where way back in the day, whenever I would talk about Bitcoin, if I talked about the price, I would have the Mt. Gox ticker and showing the graph on it. And I used they were the biggest exchange. That was the best place to tell what the Bitcoin price was. And then after Mt. Gox went down, I was like, I hope that nobody that saw me posting those lost any money. And they didn't, until a few years later. My friend Jeff Zenner told me I lost a lot of money on Mt. Gox. And basically the reason that I trusted them was because you used their charts. And I was like, oh, that doesn't feel good. So like now I try to be very, 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 very careful in terms of like, not your keys, not your money. And it sounds a little bit like hyperbole and stuff, but it only takes one friend that you really like to tell you something like that, where you feel like, oh, darn it.
So someone in the chat just said, and dudes in the chat, you can ask questions, type in Bitcoin Meister, do a super chat. And I'm glad this guy said this funny thing. Quadriga dude is in Epstein's grave. Yeah, I mean, it's controversial like that. It's you never know where the Quadriga dude might be walking around actually. Hey, okay, let's go to Ansel on all this. He's held off. He's got some stuff to say here.
Well, I love the proof of keys. And I think it's a great cultural thing to, perpetuate and keep going and get stronger. As Bitcoin grows, it's going to be very important to have some of these really solid cultural norms out there. And this is a great one to, support and talk about every single year. And so I like this. I like how there's multiple different holidays and stuff in Bitcoin, and it keeps the culture strong.
Yeah, you know what though? Blake has been doing a great job spreading the word about this. I wanted it to be bigger than this year, because we had it last year. It kind of feels like last year again. I thought it would be bigger. I wanted exchange to be brought down. I really want to learn.
Well, there's not enough fear. There needs to be more fear for people that really, for the people that aren't going to just go do it for the meme. Like they need to be scared about their coins, right? So
people are used to CNN and Fox, like telling you afraid. We gotta take some notes out of their book to be able to get to rustle the jimmies of people, because they've been doing it for so long. The jimmies are immune to rustling, so we got to come up with some new plans here.
Actually,
there's less retail too. The people that are left in the space right now, everybody that's on Bitcoin Twitter probably already has their keys. So
yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, all of us screaming about this, we're like kind of in an echo chamber. Everybody already knows about it. We got to reach out to somehow the other people have to learn. the people that have all their stuff on Coinbase, but they're not going to learn because Coinbase isn't going down this time around.
Well, people ask why do you proselytize these things? And it's like via numerous, like strengthen numbers. Like the more people that do this, the more people that use Bitcoin correctly, create new wallets for every transaction and stuff like that, the better things are. So like strengthen numbers. We encourage people to do this because it's selfishly better for us, but it's also better for you guys too. It's a good system where it's win-win here. It's not like we're getting anything out of it that we shouldn't.
All right, now people, everyone's distracted by the breads and circuses, and they don't care they're not willing to learn about how to properly take care of the Bitcoin. They're too busy watching TV. But Ansel has a great tweet about this that I want him to elaborate on. Bread and circuses has turned into stocks and politics. What was that about, Ansel?
Well, stocks, they're kind of in a melt-up phase, and they're just pumped up by easy money and monetary policy and all that stuff. And that as long as stocks go up, the masses are happy and they're not going to riot in the streets. So that's kind of the circuses, or the bread maybe. And then the circuses is the politics. And that's where, they're just two sides of the same coin yelling at each other across the aisle. And it's all fake. So I thought it fit pretty well.
Yeah, and I wanted to bring that up because a lot of people think this 2020 year is all about some election and Elizabeth Warren and Buttigieg, and that you guys even know, and you guys care so, not you guys, but the people watching care so much about these people. Dude, you got to take care of yourself because they're taking care of themselves. They're not going to take care of you. This is the Bitcoin halving year. It is not the election year. Get into that mindset now. So don't worry about what Buttigieg is doing or whatever his darn name is. Worry about where your Bitcoin is. It's not on some exchange here. But many people are going to fall for the circuses. Everybody likes a soap opera, and good. I wanted to share that. I wanted to put that tweet out there. Just to tie in a little bit of a current event. Now,
it's a very interesting though. It's almost like a weaponized concept of bread and circus. Way back in the day, it's like people weren't that smart, but now it's like the age of information. We have to have a bread and circus that looks like you're peeking behind the curtain, but you're really not. Easy for me to say, right?
No, I mean that. First of all, social media, Twitter gives people that feeling like they're real smart, and that in the old days you couldn't argue with a million people about Bernie Sanders or whatever. Now you can. You can think you're a genius and you're making up the time that people waste. And at the end of the day, the people who are, speaking of Bernie Sanders supporters, they're the ones in the end of the day are like, well, it's unfair that you're rich. It's unfair that I wasn't worrying about some 80-year-old dude and I was buying Bitcoin. No, that's
harsh but true.
All right, Canadian Steve, do you have any thoughts on this? I just let's get a Canadian perspective on what 2020 is to you.
Yeah, the year of the halving, it'll be. I mean, I look at it from the miner perspective. My revenue is going to be possibly cut almost in half. So that's going to be an interesting. I mean, obviously, it's not going to be cut directly in half. There's going to be a lot of miners having to shut down if the price doesn't pick up, obviously. So I don't know. I find it really fascinating. The halving is such a shock to the market, and it's going to really reveal a lot about sort of the state of the mining industry. Because you can sort of tell, like right now, we know how much a hash is worth, right? Like there's only so many hashes done in a day, and there's only so much Bitcoin produced in a day. So you can see what a hash is worth. And so once the revenue gets cut in half, and the hash is each hash is basically worth almost half, it's going to be interesting to see who can stay online and at what. You can sort of infer certain electricity costs and that kind of thing. So I look at it, it's going to be pretty interesting, because if you do see a lot of hash power go offline with the halving, like assuming price doesn't change, it's going to tell a lot about what the market can sustain on power costs. So I'm excited because it might make me even more bullish, because if I see a lot of miners go offline and I'm able to stay online, for example, it's just it makes me more comfortable, let's say, investing more capital into mining, for example. So
I'm very interested in the miners' perspective on this. I was reading your Twitter feed, and all these guys are linked to below. And you were talking about it being priced in or not priced in. And you also changed your name to have Bear in your name instead of Bearber.
Yeah.
So are you bearish this year? I mean, what are your thoughts on it being priced in? And are you hoarding Bitcoin now?
I don't know when I changed my name to Bearber, but it is to reflect my sort of short-term bearish outlook on the price and stuff like that. I mean, I've sort of, unlike, I guess the way I differ from what I just referred to as like the halving pumpers is I don't see how how it makes any sense that Bitcoin would pump every 4 years, like until, the halvings end in, 2140 or whenever. But I don't see that as being a practical, even though we have seen like that correlation for the last two halvings, for that to happen every 4 years in such a perfectly predictable, effectively, it ends up being a perfectly predictable, like a risk-free, anybody that knows is aware of the halving is going to make free money, like for every 4 years for the rest of the time, or not the rest of the time until the halving schedules end. And that doesn't really it's not a rational outlook for me. So the way I look at it is, based on the data, I would say that, and based on the way I think about, the economy, I expect that we'll see longer bull cycles and longer bear cycles. So you'll go through, the last bear cycle was actually pretty long. It was, what was it, like 2014 or 2013 to 2015, or 2014-ish to entering 2016. So it was like almost a 2-year cycle. And I expect this cycle to be longer. So I'm thinking, maybe 3-year cycle. And then the next bear market will be longer, like 4-year or 5-year, you know what I mean? So, but with the longer, let's say, bear cycles, I expect to see longer bull cycles and more energetic bull cycles. So like, for example, we've only just got into the industrialization of ASICs and mining. So, I expect to see the bull run. I'm hoping it starts, at least from my frame of reference, because I'm also looking at it through the lens of a miner, and we're definitely not in a mining bull market. So when we get into the mining bull market and, things get, the prices, it's snowballing. I expect to see it last longer, and a lot more energy will be brought online. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if we'll get, but we won't see the same, 10Xs in the same short time span. It'll take longer for 10Xs, but part of that is because there's so much more capital required in building up the mining infrastructure that chases the price, right? So
yeah,
I'm very bullish. But it's always perspective too. Like in a short time frame, I think we're still in a bit of a consolidation phase. I just don't think we've really flipped to something where I'm recommending, for example, for people to take on debt to buy Bitcoin. I'm not quite doing that yet.
All right, you definitely are not a halving pumper, but you have a very unique take on it. I am a halving hyper. I want people to know about the halving, at least, because I feel so few people in the space even comprehend what the heck it is. What are your thoughts, Ansel, on this halving question?
Yeah, just that very last point he made there about not taking on debt to buy Bitcoin. What do you think of that idea of taking on debt to finance mining so that you can hold your Bitcoin through the halving? How does your outlook affect that?
I think generally taking on debt for even, in general, like I say, taking on debt to either buy Bitcoin or mine is a good idea, just in general. Like, because in general, of course, Bitcoin goes up, right? Number go up. So in that case, taking on debt and leveraging debt to get more Bitcoin is always probably going to be a good idea. But that's but then, in shorter time frames, maybe not. Like, I'm actually looking right now, I have actually run this company pretty much debt-free. Well, actually debt-free for the last 3 years. So I'm looking at different options for actually financing, because as my company's growing a bit, I'm finding it's easier and easier to get more data centers deployed. And now it's more, whereas before I might've been struggling, let's say in my case, to find fuel. now that I've been finding lots of fuel and at rates that I'm willing to agree to, work with these guys on, getting capital and through debt, I think is the right way to go. So I'm definitely, I'm willing to take on all kinds of debt because mining is a bit of a long-term investment. And if anything,
so you're using fuel energy instead of price per kilowatt hour to try to decimate the cost?
Well, when I just say fuel, I mean, because I only do natural gas mining with my company. So when I mean like, because my company is a service provider. So I have to I only work with oil companies that, want to work with me. Like I don't go out and pay an oil company for fuel because anyone would accept that if I pay the right amount, right? I don't do that. I look for companies that are stressed and they have a need for me to be on their site. And ideally, I'm not paying anything for fuel. That's actually what I'm trying to do. But and I have several data centers operating that way.
So they would have fuel, and you would say, eventually we can build up your liquidity if you give that fuel to me for cheap instead of just letting it sit and separate.
Well, it's sort of like the oil and gas producers don't fucking care about Bitcoin at all, right? And all they want is someone to deal with their gas problem. So I've structured my business in such a way that I can try to be that, business that will go in and deal with their gas problem in a, more advantageously than, let's say, my competitor who might be a flare company, right? So now the problem with that is they don't care about Bitcoin. They don't want to spend their money on Bitcoin machines. So that means someone has to, and that has to either be me or someone, a third party, because we sell to third parties and operate for third parties too. So when it comes to, if I get a big oil company, I have a few right now that are that have been trialing our units, and it's looking like we're going to do bigger contracts. So when those bigger contracts come through and they say, all right, Steve, we'll commit to 100 engines, for example, this year, I need to go finance that, right? And I can't exactly finance it myself. So that debt is a critical part. I think it's really, any miner that every miner should be looking to take on fiat debt, because fiat is the whole point of mining is to convert your worthless fucking dollars into beautiful Bitcoins, and taking on debt to do that is the best way you can do it, right?
That's the most bullish sentiment I have ever heard of anybody out, and I don't disagree with it, but I like it.
But one thing that it's always case by case because everyone has a different need, but I try to minimize liquidating my own Bitcoin, my company's Bitcoin and my personal Bitcoin to mine, to buy more ASICs and to mine more Bitcoin. Because the point of my admin just left. The point of, it's hard to convert your Bitcoin, your liquid Bitcoin, into an ASIC and then get more Bitcoin back, right? That's extremely hard to do. Only fucking manufacturers can really do that unless you have a really huge advantage on power costs and that kind of thing. So mining, I just look at mining as a way to convert your garbage dollars into Bitcoin. And the best way to do that is to take on debt.
I've been mined for a long time, and as soon as you mentioned gas, I was like, I have to know what that relationship is. So thank you for those answers. It's very interesting what's possible now versus what's gone on in the past.
Yeah, dude, Steve he's saving the world. He's reusing that natural. He's gonna explain more about that. Give us an update at the end, exactly what's going on, because it's such an interesting story, and I've been aware of it now for since the start of 2018. I don't even know when now, but I love that he comes on the show to talk about this. I got one last question though about miners and taking out debt and all this stuff. Are they hoarding their Bitcoin now, Steve? From what you know? Because they're going to mine less afterwards. So if they start hoarding it now, less Bitcoin is going to go in the market. Thus, the price would go up. And I think that's what happened in 2016. Do you hear about this? Or are you hoarding it at all?
My own business strategy hasn't changed. And it hasn't changed certainly anticipating the halving. So obviously, I've known it's been coming for quite a while. My personal strategy on I try to, as a company, I try to hold as much Bitcoin as I can. And most of my revenue is fiat because I sell data centers to oil companies and to third parties, and usually they're paying in fiat. So the Bitcoin that I am mining, I do try to actually just hold it. And I'm wearing a lot of hats still at this company. And one hat I'm not interested in wearing is like speculative trading. So I'm not like out on the market putting my Bitcoin and trying to, make more of it. The only thing I do with our Bitcoin, aside from hold it, is certain times when I need to make a purchase, let's say a batch of ASICs or, pay a contractor or whatever. Like if I feel like the market is overvaluing the coin, like for example, we had that micro pump up to like 14,000 recently. I sold somewhere in that top because I felt like, okay, this is a bit of a micro pump and I need a bit of cash. So I'll sell some Bitcoin, right? But that's really all the extent of what I do. And I don't know if I can really speak for other miners, but I do think like most miners are in the game to accumulate Bitcoins. Now, when the revenue, assuming our revenue gets cut in half, our costs are going to be, about the same. So the amount of Bitcoins that are getting liquidated to cover those costs are probably going to, stay about the same. So I don't know if we'll see more, exactly more liquidation or not. I'm not sure, but.
All right. Now this halving priced in thing, meme, whatever you want to call it, has been going around Twitter. Another thing that has been going around Twitter, and I want to ask Ansel about this. This is actually a question from the chat. Remember, thanks, guys. You can do the super chat or type in Bitcoin Meister. This one dude, John Virtue, he says, please ask your panel what they think of Plan B's stock to flow model. Ansel, this one has been stretched out for a while. Some people worship it. What do you think about Plan B's stock to flow model?
I think it's a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy. So I do agree with it overall. And like he has on his plots, where he connects maybe, 5 different goods like silver, gold, et cetera, and Bitcoin. And it all he fits that line. I think there's something to that. I don't know. I mean, he's a numbers guy, so he knows a lot more about the statistics and how he's doing all that to figure it out. But I think there's definitely something to it. Yeah.
All right. What do you think, Blake?
I mean, I think it's good. A lot of Keynesians make the argument. It's all about flow, velocity of the money, get the sloshes and the slooshes, get the money going. It's all about flow. But stock to flow and having the stock of what's actually being used here and how much is that stock going up or down, that's a huge part of this equation. So I think that it's way more advanced. And I think this actually, if you were to graph out Bitcoin and the price going up or down, and you made a median ratio, you could actually tell where the miners are hoarding underneath that and where they're liquidating, trying to sell their Bitcoin for more than it'll go down to so that they can continually accumulate more and more and more Bitcoin. Yes, you can just hold and dollar cost average, and that's great. Most people do that. That's what I do. But if you're really aggressive to the point where you want to run a mine at a potential loss and take on debt, what you want to do is sell Bitcoin when it gets over the line with the sole explicit intent of using that fiat to buy more Bitcoin when it goes below that line. Things like the stock to flow ratio model help people graph out where that line is, where they want to buy and where they want to sell to absolutely turbocharge their Bitcoin accumulation.
All right, but I want to dig a little deeper into this because some people worship it like it's the golden calf. Okay, like it's well, the golden calf wasn't holy, but is this? Is it 100% right? I mean, do you put it on a pedestal beyond anything? Because I think it's ridiculous the way some people worship it. I mean, I think
it's like a lens. You got a telephoto lens, you got a macro lens, you've got a whole bunch of different lenses to look at things through. And I think it's one of those lenses. If it's the only lens that you use, it's probably not the best. It's better to use more of them. As far as if you only get to use one lens, is it the best? I don't know. It seems like it's okay, but I don't know that I would go around promoting it as the incontrovertibly best lens to look at this situation through. I think that's a little too much.
Yeah, but because some people do. Steve, what's your take on it?
Well, I mean, I'm a bit of a critic of it. I like the thing about the stock to flow model. Like, I think all the data is accurate. Like, there's no criticism there. Like, there's definitely a correlation. Whether or not you can use it as a future, like as a tool to predict, let's say, the future price of Bitcoin, I'm pretty skeptical on that. I mean, there's some of the criticisms I have with it are like, I mean, partly I want promoters of the model to sort of give a better rational explanation, or at least try, on why they think, for example, just one criticism, like why the stock to flow model in Bitcoin holds up and in shitcoins it doesn't, like Bitcoin Cash or Bitcoin Satoshi's Vision, which are direct forks. I mean, why is it about Bitcoin that, is it just because Bitcoin's like the most useful coin that it makes sense and holds up in Bitcoin because it has the big economy?
Intrinsic value debate incoming.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the major thing I don't like about it is even in Plan B's like paper, the original post that got really popular. What does he say? He says he has a section on it saying that scarcity drives value, and that to me doesn't really make any sense, because Bitcoin isn't scarce because it has the stock to flow ratio path that it has, and obviously eventually according to the stock to flow model, because it only considers new coins as flow, once there's no more halvings and there's no more Bitcoin issued, it becomes undefined, right? So anyone can arbitrarily issue something with absolute, one of a kind scarcity. That's not what gives it value. It's the people that, for whatever reason, the people have the need for that thing is what gives it value, right? Whatever reason you find it useful is what gives Bitcoin value. So I disagree with the whole premise that scarcity drives value. It's sort of like I've said, online, it's sort of like saying, the whole labor theory of value thing. Like there's people that think, hard work means valuable work, which obviously isn't true. It's more subjective. Digging a hole doesn't mean anyone wants the hole, right? So I don't know. There's some other little nitpicks I have about it, but overall, I don't see any use. I don't see what's the use of it other than being a fun meme. That's really all I do.
All right. Before we move on from this topic, do you, Ansel or Blake, do you have anything else to say about it? All right. Good. So that was a good question. We'll see how it works, dudes. We'll see if he gets his price right. I hope it is right. I hope
I put a public bet out there of 1 Bitcoin that it would fail in a certain time limit. So I put my skin in the game on that one.
All right. Hey, by the way, speaking of games, this is a little off topic, but last time you were on the show, Steve, someone asked me afterwards or in the comments section, do you play hockey? Or did you ever play hockey?
No, why? Because I'm Canadian?
No, because you're big. They said it looks like you beat the heck out of some people in hockey or something. You're a big dude. It looks like you were checking people all over the place, the guy thought. And then I started thinking about it as I met you in person. I'm like, yeah, man, that probably would hurt a lot if that dude like slammed into me playing hockey. It'd be dead. Okay.
I play baseball and basketball. So
all right, baseball, man. That's great.
I can throw elbows around, but I can't skate, which is sort of sad.
There you go, people who are wondering about the hockey playing and hitting into people. Okay, so yeah, we got all sorts of, you never know what's going to come up on the show. Well, let's talk about something, speaking about hitting people or bombing people. Something happened yesterday, and here's a tweet that says, here's the thing, regardless of whether Bitcoin actually moved directly because of this recent news is irrelevant. The fact is it did, and gold moved with it, cementing that Bitcoin might be a safe haven asset. Now, cementing and might really don't go along. But hey, is Bitcoin a safe haven asset? Now, there are people who are worried about World War III and blah, blah, blah. And yeah, sure enough, after the United States took out that terrorist dude yesterday, the price of Bitcoin went up like $400. So is it now considered a safe haven asset after 11 years? Blake, what's your take on safe haven asset?
Well, we have cemented the fact that it might. It might be, but it's a cemented might be. It reminds me of what's that movie where it's like this cologne works 40% of the time, every time. It's like, that doesn't make any sense. But this is like, did Bitcoin go up or down because of this? That's a really interesting question. There's a whole lot of political questions about this, about what happened, about was this guy advocating for peace right before they killed him, and was it a mistake, and was it a good thing? And that's all very, very, very much something that has a visceral impact on whether or not markets went up and down, and what people all around the world think, not just people exposed to U.S. media. So it's a really tough question. I always have a really hard time pinning any one given event into this is exactly where this volume came from in these jurisdictions, and this is how much the price changed. It's very difficult for me to do that. I've seen other people that are a little bit better than I am, but I think it's just a difficult thing. I think that, yes, obviously the situation you're describing would have, a boosting impact, but as far as how much, I'd say it's so hard to say, because Bitcoin has an inelastic supply and a global jurisdiction. So, it's the butterfly effect that can go from one area to another is really, really, really personified in Bitcoin, because when that whip is cracking, there's no elasticity to it.
Crack that whip. All right, now pound that like button. In the past, when people were worried that bad things were about to happen, they could buy gold, but now they can buy Bitcoin. So is it that option wasn't there before? Someone tweeted, I retweeted something about that also. So is it a safe? Do you foresee in this decade when bad things are happening, maybe people are fearing an economic crash, that they are going to use Bitcoin as a safe haven asset? Have we moved to that realm now? Okay, good. Ansel, what's your take?
Well, I think, it definitely will be a safe haven, and it is for some people now, of course, but I don't think anything over a 24-hour period is going to affect people's available capital to buy Bitcoin. I think it was just market makers that, it was an excuse. It made pumping the easiest direction to get liquidations and to wreck people. And so that's what they did. You have to look at long-term for, volumes to go up and all these things to see how much money people are bringing in. I don't think 24 hours, any sort of 24-hour news cycle has very little to do with the price, in my opinion.
As far as my personal experience, when the price started to move, I got a price down threshold and went and did a dollar cost average purchase. I have a bias. I only know what I do, but I assume that a lot of other people did that as well. They might not have, but in terms of what I think made the price happen, I think that it hit that down threshold and then bounced off of that number. But the geopolitics do come into it. It's way more than a zero impact.
I think it was just a BART trend, wasn't it? It wasn't just another. We had the little dip the other day, and it bumped back up, just like the Bart Simpson.
And what do they call that? They call that institutional trading manipulation, when those things come into the markets and do that.
Yeah, of course.
Well, let's talk about. I don't believe in instant trade. Someone's got a quote out there. Now, by the way, we've entered this realm of the 2020s. There was somebody that had a loud mouth that said that he could crack SegWit, or that he had 1 million Bitcoin he was going to dump on the January 1st, 2020. And the dude was a total liar. So that people even believe such a person in the first place is unbelievable to me.
I thought the courier got stopped in a blizzard, didn't he?
Who knows? Who knows what the latest excuse is? But so now that that's out of the way, that SegWit isn't getting cracked, and somebody didn't have 1 million Bitcoin, and there wasn't some toilet trust or whatever it was called. There's new FUD for this 2020s. We're gonna have to go through some new FUD, and I don't know what your favorite new FUD is. There are not enough Bitcoin. We need 42 million Bitcoin. But here's one: Wall Street's increasing paper Bitcoin industry will suppress the real Bitcoin price for years to come. Okay, so they're scapegoating Wall Street. They say Wall Street has the ability to print out paper Bitcoin, and that's going to ruin everything, and we should just get out of Bitcoin. Steve, what's your take on that? Can Wall Street make paper Bitcoin and suppress the price? Or are we all doomed?
I guess there's a lot of people that worry about manipulation. What was it? There was like a theory that was it backed, or one of those derivative exchanges, like that the whole point of that would be to suppress Bitcoin, right?
I've heard it all. Yes.
I mean, I don't think I'm really qualified to comment, but I don't see Bitcoin doesn't seem to be the kind of asset class that you can easily manipulate. I mean, because really to do that, I think you ultimately have to have some kind of control over the supply, and I don't think they have that control, or they have a chance of getting that control. But no, I certainly wouldn't buy into that garbage.
All right. It's garbage to me too. Ansel, what do you think?
Well, they can manipulate gold and stuff because they own all the gold and it's all locked away. You know, they dig it out of the ground so that they can put it back in the ground. So it's paper market can very much manipulate the gold price, I think. But they still have the miners, the gold miners and the Bitcoin miners that if the price was manipulated too much down, you know, we wouldn't see this constant increase in hash rate all the time. And it's very hard to see how the price could be much, you know, different than it is right now today through their manipulation.
Blake, any thoughts on possible Wall Street manipulation in the 2020s?
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember if I was on a panel with Caitlin Long about this. I think that I was, but now I can't remember. So people are going to go back and they'll be like, you just watched her videos. You were never on a panel with her, which might be true. In any case, her stance on rehypothecation, I think, is really, really interesting. And rehypothecation means when you've got something and you're supposed to be holding it and then you lend it out on the side. One of the parallels that people draw is that there was like 33-to-1 lending in 2008 when the banks collapsed and stuff like that. It was really hard for the banks to collapse. They thought it wasn't going to happen because they have a lot of control over currency. Just like gold, there's a lot of control involved. So people do things that, you know, that they can get away with. They pinch both ends of the system and they go in the middle and they do things that they wouldn't normally be able to get away with. In Bitcoin, it's not very easy to pinch both ends of the system because if you rehypothecate and the price jumps up a lot, you have to be somebody that is important enough to be in charge of that much money and dumb enough to make it so that the rug can be pulled out of you in such a visceral way that you'll go upside down. But with enough money, you know, the backing of the Federal Reserve, I don't want to call this completely and totally impossible. So it's a very, very interesting thing. If they go about this at scale with the full help of the Federal Reserve, and the rug gets pulled out from underneath them, that's also a very interesting scenario to consider. So we have to think about, are these discrete little bucket shops going to rehypothecate and then die? Or is there going to be this big monolithic effort to do it? And is that going to succeed or is it going to die? Well, I don't see it succeeding. It's a global jurisdiction. That would be really hard to corner for people in the US. So the entire thing is very, very interesting. But the way that the incentives are aligned to destroy the system would be so inherently anti-pragmatic that I can't ever see that happening.
All right.
I think ultimately too, like if they want to, if that's the goal, to suppress the price, and I mean the price is a reflection of the utility, I guess you could say, of the network to the people in the network. So I mean, if you're interested in suppressing the price, you're probably going to need to suppress the utility of the coin somehow. And I mean, if I was them, I'd be looking at, you know, somehow censoring miners or like trying to get majority hash power and actually throwing a wrench in things. Whereas, I don't know, these paper games, I'm not sure how that's if that can do anything, but.
I gotta say, I think we live in a little bubble here in the Bitcoin world, and we care a lot about Bitcoin. I don't think some of these outside organizations and governments really care that much at this point, as much as I mean, maybe one day they will, I don't know, but I don't see, I don't see people trying to do bad things to Bitcoin. I really don't see it being a huge threat right now, as some paranoid people think it is. And I think some people are still are former gold buggers, and they're living in that mentality still of doom and manipulation, et cetera, et cetera. And we're in a whole new realm here. We're in the 2020s. So that's my take on it, actually. And speaking about the 2020s, I want to share a Steve Barber tweet here. I'm really looking forward to the 2020s. It will be the decade where money production moves away from the lazy, negligent hands of central bankers and into the hands of hardworking, competent people such as mechanics, electricians, programmers, and IT professionals. Well, there's a positive take there. Steve, any?
I've been trying to like tweet a bit more bullish sentiment lately. I've been getting a lot of shit for the bearishness, so.
Well, you turned your name into Bear man. I mean, people are going to be like, you're saying you're a bear in your name now, dude. But no, I mean, I'm glad. Do you have anything else to say about that tweet? Anything, any sweet thoughts there?
Yeah, it seems to be true. I mean, even this last decade, it's been, you know, obviously with the rise of Bitcoin, it's been going that way. I mean, it takes tradespeople to build out mines, you know, I mean, those are just a few examples of the tradespeople involved, but there's so many different, you know, skilled individuals in let's say the mining supply chain and the whole Bitcoin ecosystem, right? So Yeah, it's just an allusion to the fact that Bitcoin is a free market money, and as opposed to fiat, which is a captive market money. And I don't see how a captive market money, which basically relies on no competition, is going to compete with this new paradigm. So,
Ansel, any 2020 thoughts here? Positive, negative? What are we getting into here? Is someone gonna come and destroy Bitcoin? Are we gonna keep on hearing about liars talking about destroying Bitcoin? What's up for the 2020s?
Well, I just had something to respond to Blake there when he was talking about the futures market and manipulation. Do you remember Petterfee? He was the founder of Interactive Brokers, and he talked about when the CME was just launching. He said this was going to bankrupt the clearinghouse because they were going to have to take the short side, and the upside is unlimited. So I think if there was really a bunch of manipulation that was going to happen or could happen or does happen on a regular basis, that he wouldn't have been as terrified as he was at that time. That kind of gives you a glimpse, I think, into the elites and their mindset.
Good point. Blake, anything you want to add to that there?
Well, anytime people talk about breaking Bitcoin and stuff like that, I think it's always really, really good to go back over what Bitcoin is at a fundamental level. Like hardness in computer science is a real metric. Like it's not like, oh, that's hard. Well, that's a subjective thing. Hardness is how long it takes to do something. So like the hardness of Bitcoin, you can hide something in a mailbox. Boom, you open the mailbox. It's not very hard. Hiding something in one of three, that takes a lot more time to look through. And then when you have the Bitcoin key range of how many mailboxes that is, to be able to track all that information, you'd have to mine all the lustrous material on Earth, make a drive bigger than the planet, and then all of the energy ever mined throughout all of human civilization wouldn't be enough to turn it on. So that security proposition is great, but then people are like, well, what if somebody guesses my address? Because they could totally do that and they would have access to my fees or to my funds. Yes, they would. They would have, you don't have a lock or anything, but you do have multi-sig. And what are the odds they're going to guess two of these drawers in this monolithic, gigantic, impossibly huge thing? Then it's not going to happen. And if you think it is, then three multi-sig. And you look at this security system and the math-based security protocol and all this stuff and how they're not biffing the coordinates of where these mailboxes are. Like the system works in perpetuity. You can hide things in this huge data set and it doesn't come back out. And people are like, that's going to fail. Really? How is that going to fail? I would love to hear how that system that's so incentivized that it would be suicidally anti-pragmatic to interrupt it, how is that system going to be brought down? I don't see a path that leads to that happening. I don't see a path where that can happen. It can be damaged, it can be anti-fragile, it can bounce back from bad news, but systemic failure,
that's the gold bug victimhood.
Yeah, I mean,
everybody has to get them, and they can never get ahead because all the bad guys are so much stronger than they are and stuff. So.
But the developers hate when I talk about that stuff and then say afterwards that, systemic failure is all but impossible, because we don't want to say that. But in my estimation, I cannot see how systemic failure would affect Bitcoin. So yeah, in the future, I think it's going to continue to be a really, really amazing, powerful force for good. Satoshi wanted to do things that incentivized positive behavior, and he did that so fantastically with this system. It's unbelievable. It's still a fascinating thing to me.
Dude, that is why I get you on this show, man. People are raving about that one. I love when you get on those little streaks like that. All right, I do. I want to ask. There was a question I had for Ansel that I forgot. Basically, people, as the halving approaches, there are all the people that say, "Oh, the halving, this proof of works. Well, we want proof of stake, Ethereum proof of stake." Hey, what's your prediction for proof of stake in the 2020s, Ansel?
Oh, in the whole decade?
Yes. Will we still have it at the end of the decade? Will people learn the difference between the two?
Well, for the coming year, it probably won't happen, right? Probably won't happen for 4 or 5 years, if ever, on a big scale. Maybe you're alluding to one of my quotes from the past where I said Ethereum will never go proof of stake and be over a $1 billion market cap. So I think that could also happen. Like they could successfully go proof of stake. It would just be a non-event because they're so tiny. I think it might have a niche use case, but it doesn't have a global network use case, in my opinion.
All right. Well, since we're talking about mining, Steve Barber, give us an update on what's the news over there.
Okay. Well, first of all, I second everything Ansel just said. Proof of stake is fucking really really stupid. So dumb. I mean, I'm obviously as biased as you can get. My business is based on proof of work, right? But
yeah.
Oh God, it's just crazy that you can just, it's like you can keep delaying this project, you can keep delaying implementing it over and over again, have no actual working, proof of stake systems that have any value or any network, and keep promising this thing. And like, I just can't believe people will take these people seriously. It's just
that was the bigger question. You said there's really no proof of stake success at this point. Is it going to go away by the end of the decade? Will people still be trotting this out, or will everybody be doing altcoins with proof of work or something else pulling out of their butts? I don't know.
It's like the perpetual motion scams. People have compared proof of stake.
It's a Rube Goldberg machine.
Yeah, and it's like those scammers haven't gone away. Like they just, they're still out there trying to scam and come up with the next, free energy engine and stuff. But it's
okay. So wait, you're going to give us an update in a second. First, Blake is going to give his take on proof of stake and if it can last, and then you'll give us the update on the mining. Because Blake's got something to say about it. I can tell.
Oh, sorry, I messed up my screen. I don't know what I'm looking at now, and I'm all confused. But yeah, like it's a Rube Goldberg machine. It's really, really complicated. So anybody that's from the outside isn't likely to come in and debunk proof of stake, because it takes a lot of understanding to be like, hey, this isn't tenable. One of the first big proof of stake fights that I got in was with everybody in the community about Steemit. Everybody loves Steemit, and they're like, hey, Steemit. And I was like, they have minimum staking times and stuff that are like 24 months long. And I think that Tone and I talked about it for a little bit, and then Tone went on this, was going to disprove all that. He was going to make sure that he took as much time as was necessary. And I still think that that's funny to this day. And one of the better examples of, if you want to know why proof of stake maybe has some big flaws, Tone's criticism of Steemit is still solid gold.
Dude, that's quite a flashback you gave there. Tone got into it jumped the shark. He argued everyone about Steemit in the summer of 2016. I mean, it was like crazy. I mean, it was just stretched out so far. The whole we're veterans, dude. So does anybody else remember that? I mean, check out the archives. Check out World Crypto Network archives. It was a thing in 2016. All right, good. Puts a big smile on my face there. Okay, Steve, tell us about you're saving the world there. You're turning gas into Bitcoin.
Am I?
Supposedly, yeah. I mean, that's what I hear. You're saving the world.
Yeah, well, anyone monetizing natural gas is doing the same thing. What I'm working on recently, I got a couple new products. I'm hopefully going to launch this month. So they're basically in prototype stage, but one isn't that exciting. It's just another Bitcoin mine. It's our megawatt unit. I think people will like it. It's going to be pretty cool in how I designed it for managing airflow, and it's got some unique features, but frankly, it's not going to shake the Bitcoin space by any means. But I think the mining community will hopefully appreciate it, especially the oil field. And then I got another one I'm working on. I'm building it right now. I could probably just walk you out there and show it to you. Well, I could do that.
Yeah, dude, maybe you should. Maybe you could do that. We'll have Blake and Ansel talk their conclusionary remarks, and you can you walk outside or let's.
All right, I'll go out there. It's sort of it's a prototype, so it's like a piece of shit right now. It's just like that's the first version. So.
All right, you do your thing. Start making noise when you're ready to show it. Blake, what else do you have to say? We've been here 11 years now, Blake. What any highlights you want to bring up? Anything you're looking forward to? And anything. The floor is yours, Blake.
Well, I've spent a lot of time in the Bitcoin space talking about things that nobody wants to hear, things that nobody wants to talk about, things that people don't think are important. And it's kind of weird saying that that's been almost my entire career in the space, is talking about things that other people want to avoid. But what I want to talk about is the kind of fabric of society, the fabric of the OSI model, and where negative and positive rights come in, and why Bitcoin is so valuable. Not just that it is valuable. I actually don't want bad people to invest a lot of money. I don't care care if they do, but you know what I mean? I would rather find somebody that's a good person and explain to them why it's so valuable than find a bad person and have them go, okay, I believe you. I'm still a bad person. Let me use it to make money. I want us all to understand, we need to go to the future in a better way. But I'm interested in seeing exactly what this mining setup is. So I want to look at this.
Yeah. I'm quite. All right.
Well, I mean, it's all right. So you can see, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this is just a cool little project because it's since I started like doing this stuff, like it's a constant like iteration, right? I'm always trying to improve, what we build. But this this unit, it's hard. I have my laptop, so it's a gen set. Like it looks like a piece of shit because I just went and got an old refurbished one. There's a few new parts on it, but it's overall some old equipment. But it's like a prototype. So basically, you got the gen set on a skid. I don't know if you can see what I'm pointing to. But on this section here is basically the Bitcoin mine is going to be built into it. So the cool thing about this thing is over here, you got like an engine radiator, right? And so that's going to be in control of all the airflow. So basically, the engine and mine are all in one. I mean, I've done this kind of thing before, but the unique thing, and I've really shrunk it down, like reduced the costs, and effectively, the engine does the work of the airflow. So basically, it's a pretty cool product when you think about it, in that you got power generation and power consumption all in one box. Like it's pretty unique that way. And then I'm just gonna these are just more minis. Like the mini product is like the one I've been selling the most of. Like it's just like a small cube, right? And it's got like a controller, and basically we fill this rack up with ASICs, and you can control everything from your phone, network switch and stuff. It's
Show that again, but hold the computer just steady. Just don't move the computer, just like.
Or real close, because it looks like it's.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Right,
digitized a bit in the closer view.
Really
there, now I can see what it's made of in there. Yeah, right in there.
All right, say it. Okay, good. There.
So that's like what our newest product that's like commercialized. So I mean, like these cubes, they're like 4-foot cubes. So basically, you can stack them like next to each other or too high, for example. So they're meant to be like, if you have a well site and you have a small footprint, then you can put a lot of power in a small space.
Very cool. Very cool field trip there. Pound that like button, people. You never know when you're going to go on the field trip in the middle of the show. Thank you for showing us all that stuff, Steve. All right. We are definitely reaching the end of the show. Only a few minutes left here. Ansel, your conclusionary thoughts, anything you wanted to add, anything that was left out? What's your take on BTC Pay server?
I like it. I'm not running an instance of it or anything like that, but I think it's a great software for the space. I need to. I have a spare laptop. I need to get all this stuff going on it. But BTC Pay server is great. Other than that, my closing comments, happy 2020, happy halving year. Bitcoin presidential election is going to be going on, so people don't pay attention to that regular presidential election that's happening. And great to meet Steve and Blake. Always a pleasure. And Adam, of course.
We've been friends for a long, long time, man. So it's been a pleasure.
Veterans, baby. I love it. I love bringing the best guest in the freaking space here. Pound that like button, people. All right, Steve, I'll let you have a conclusionary thought. Anything you wanted to add? He's linked to below, so if you want to get a lot of people always want to get in touch with you after these shows. So his Twitter is below. You can DM him, et cetera, et cetera. Anything you got to add, Steve?
Oh, well, not a lot, I guess. I mean, I'm pretty. I have a pretty positive outlook for this year, like 2020. There's a lot of, obviously, even aside from the halving and all the uncertainty with that and in the mining space, It's going to be interesting to see. Like, obviously, it seems like political tensions are ever rising. So we'll see if there is any correlation between Bitcoin being a safe haven and what's going on the world stage. But I don't know where it will be in by the end of the year for price, but I'm hoping we're on a clear uptrend, and that's when things will get really exciting. So, and it was nice to meet you guys as well on stream. So appreciate you guys having me on.
Yeah, thanks for
That
being
mind
here.
righteous.
Thanks for being here, Ansel, too. And Blake, thank you very much for making your return. You get the final word, Blake.
The final word. Oh man, I'm gonna have to encourage everybody to do their homework or whatever to understand the difference between liberties and entitlements, and when somebody has a right, how if Smith has a right, Jones has a duty. I think that a lot of us get involved in the left brain computer science of the space, and that's great. That's millimetrical progress that doesn't slow down. We make progress, but understanding the underpinnings of why we're doing these things and what the problems are with the old systems, I think, are huge. There was 2 threads today where people were disagreeing, and one of them was Eric Voorhees with Nick Szabo, and then I believe Adam Back came in and weighed in, and then there was another disagreement between Shinobi and Saifedean. So there are big splits of people that are really, really, really involved, and I think that a lot of the things that we need to start doing are understanding where we sit in terms of understanding rights versus duties and how to program that into these technologies into the future, because I see Bitcoin as not just a way to make money or like communicate. I see it as something that can fundamentally make really, really, really big elemental changes. And if we treat it like something like that, I think that it will rise to be that. And I think that if we continue to try to, only talk about price and pump and dumping and stuff like that, eventually there's going to be forks and forks off that try to prioritize those things over the things that I'm talking about. And that's not something that I want to see happen. So I don't want to fearmonger anybody, but everybody learning as much as they can and putting their truth out into the world is very, 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 very important in the Bitcoin space as we decide where are we going to go in the future. Collectivism empowerment through technology, or empowerment of the individual, and liberalism in the future actually living. It's kind of up to us. It's our Great War, it's our Great Depression, and it's kind of a bummer to talk about, but I always want people to talk more about those fundamental philosophical issues that inform us when we make these technologies.
Individualism is the accomplishment. Collectivism is the default. Don't default it. You got to try hard to be an individual. These threads that you just alluded to, did you retweet any of it? If people go to your Twitter, will they see them? Or they're gonna have to look up those dudes?
I did not. I think that there's nothing that so if I retweet those things, people are going to ask me what I think.
Okay, well, just name the main guy.
Oh yeah, you can. So Nick Szabo tweeted and Eric Voorhees retweeted. So if you go to Eric Voorhees and you go to his tweet, he responded to what Nick Szabo said. Then there's a whole thread there, and Adam Back replies at some point. So
okay, that's a good recommendation there, guys. Go check out Eric Voorhees' thread, Eric Voorhees' Twitter feed. I definitely do not agree with a lot of the things he says all the time. So that there's something, you'll get some different thoughts that you don't usually get here. But
in conclusion, the reason I didn't retweet it is because and eventually I'm going to do a discussion with some other people about this, and it's going to take a while. There's a lot to discuss. So I think that discussing this type of thing on Twitter, even when you break up your tweets, it's kind of like discussing physics theory and hand gestures. You don't get somebody's voice going up and down, or somebody saying, I understand the way that you feel. I don't want to hurt people either, but this is the way that things are best. I think those conversations fall apart on Twitter very, very quickly, but I think that they're important to have. So
very good. It's a deep discussion, people, and that's why Blake's on the show. He brings the deepness here. Okay, everybody, that is the end of the show. Thank you, guests. Thank you, everybody in this chat. Thanks for everything. Hey, we're in we're in the 20s. It's a new year. Be positive, people. I'm Adam Meister, and it's happy 11th birthday, Bitcoin. I'm Adam Meister, the Bitcoin Meister, the Disrupt Meister. Remember to subscribe to this channel, like this video, share this video. Check out the links below. Pound that like button. Bang that bell button. Shabbat shalom. Everybody, new show here every day. I'll be back Saturday night. We're here every Friday. We got new guests coming to you this year. It is going to be a rocking new year. Okay, check. Bye-bye, everybody. Bye-bye. See ya. Thanks. All right.